Hi guys, welcome back to the channel for another video. I am on such a high. I wasn't really meant to record today, but I just did. I just participated on a panel for a conference for the University of Melbourne with junior doctors talking about body image and eating disorders, and I can't tell you how happy it makes me that there's so many initiatives for people in positions of treatment and positions of privilege within the treatment space, where there are opportunities for them to learn and to hear about lived experience, that I just wanted to pass that hope on, that there is change. It is bit by bit, but there is change. So very, very happy today. On to a less happy topic. Well, it's not totally unhappy. There are some positives to share. But I wanted to come and give you guys a bit of an update about where I am in my process with grief. It's not something that I've detailed in quite a while, since I did a very in-depth podcast about my realization that what I had been dealing with since late 2019 was traumatic grief. And that was resulting from, as many of you would know, the death of my father at the end of 2019 from terminal cancer, and taking care of him in America. And then 7 months later, finding my grandmother passed away in her home. And really just coming to terms with how much my brain was clearly dealing with, and the realization that that is trauma. It's not just the grief, it's the traumatic component that was making life really quite difficult. And the reason I want to share sort of occasional updates and insights into my process with grief is that grief is a lifelong process. And one of the most comforting things that I've experienced is people being realistic and honest, and giving constructive, productive insights and feedback about what the lifelong roller coaster of grief really is. Before my dad passed away, I would watch videos of people talking about the loss of their parents. I remember watching Whitney Port's video about the loss of her dad, and I just rewatched that over and over and over again, because she was there with her husband and her baby and this great business, and her life seemed happy. And then she would talk about her father, and it was as if he'd just passed away. And I was like, I need to prepare for that, but I also have hope that there is going to be life for me beyond the end of his life, as she's clearly been able to do, and carrying the memory of him with her.
We obviously miss him terribly. And I would think I would just ask him questions. What do you think I could be doing better? Are we being good parents? Is there a way we could help my mom better?
I now want to kind of help to contribute and normalize the message that, you know, grief doesn't have an endpoint, that there are ways that we can manage and tolerate, but the reality of grief is that it is eternal. Just like your love for a person is eternal. Unless you stop loving that person, you don't stop grieving them. And I will never stop loving my dad or my grandmother. And I've heard from people who've listened to the podcast and the podcast my sister and I did together, who have said, you know, thank you for talking about it in its most raw form, not violins playing, not, you know, suddenly everyone's skipping and, you know, holding hands and they're moving on and that's the end of the movie. That it is this absolutely non-linear, lifelong process. So like I said, back in January, I made that podcast. When I finally had the opportunity, life had slowed down enough. I'd taken myself down the coast. I knew I needed to be home and somewhere peaceful and quiet and out of chaos and near my family, and let my grief just bottom out. I don't mean I let my mental health bottom out. I'm not telling people to bottom out with their depression or their eating disorder or their anxiety or whatever it is. But I, with my grief, had to let it bottom out. I had to see it for what it really was. And I had to really acknowledge that my life was different, forever changed. That I, in a way, am different and forever changed. And to stop pushing it away. And I don't think I'd ever intentionally pushed it away, but because of all the surrounding life circumstances, when Dad died and then when Gran died, like chaos central all over the place, I never had the opportunity. My brain, which I have so much appreciation for, literally just went, we're not ready to look at that yet. We're going to save that for like a year and a half, and then we can unpack it and have a look. And so the delay of my grief hitting me was really upsetting, because I was like, I thought I was managing so well, and I thought that I was so okay, and I was really strong and resilient. What does this say about my resilience and my strength? And then through educating myself via therapy and all kinds of other really amazing, things that have helped me personally, I finally just gave myself permission to say, this is what it is. This is what grief is. This is your experience of it. This is not a movie. It's not, an episode of the OC. Don't we love my up-to-date references? For you young kids, I'm so relatable. This is your real life. This is real loss. These are real relationships that were formative and affirming, and they are no longer, in your day-to-day life. And that is, forever changing. And it was a process of giving myself permission to feel extraordinarily sad, angry, to feel guilt, to feel every range of emotion I hadn't allowed to surface, or my brain hadn't allowed to surface, because I wasn't in a safe enough place life-wise to have the space and the time to do that. So since then, I came back to Sydney, and I just continued to kind of give myself that permission to not force myself, not to put any deadlines or, time parameters around when I was meant to feel better, or, that I was even supposed to feel better, that maybe this grief process is kind of going to lead me. I'm not going to lead it, and maybe that's okay. And sort of as soon as I did that and surrendered the idea that I can control my brain's reaction to losing two of the most important people to me, the pressure went away. And when the pressure went away, so much of the pain and the frustration disappeared. And my fixation on what I'd lost and how angry I was at what I'd lost and what was missing from my life went away. The shame I carried about my involvement in my dad's passing, which I talk about in the podcast, went away. I was driving down to Mum's place just for a weekend visit. I think one of the first times I'd been back since I came back to Sydney early this year. And I was coming into town, and as you come into town, there's this beautiful white church up on this hill. It looks like literally something out of a movie. And I just started bawling my eyes out. But it was a happy cry. It was a happy release and a happy cry. And I could literally hear in my head this, like I was talking to myself, but I wasn't intentionally talking to myself. It was like there was just this voice in my head that was basically talking about the fact that I have to forgive myself for how my dad died. I have to forgive myself for my involvement in it. And ultimately that I deserve that forgiveness when I'm ready to sort of go there. And again, it was this sort of weight going off my shoulders that I'm, finally getting to a place where I can forgive myself. And I ultimately since have been able to say that I forgive myself for what had to be done when my father passed away. And that, coupled with taking the pressure off myself to feel better and to make sense of it, and for all of this loss to have purpose, that it had to have meaning, and that I had to make sense of it. I had to make something out of it. And part of that was to, sit in my shame and my guilt. And when I let go of all of that, of my expectations and of my guilt and my shame, I just was left with the grief. And the grief is the loss and the love and the sadness and the missing them and the wanting to talk to them and the frustration that I can't. But without all the other stuff that made it impossible for me to access that love and that grief. I was so steeped in shame and anger and the guilt that I couldn't access the memories. I couldn't think of my dad. I couldn't think of my grandmother. As soon as I started going there, the shame and the guilt would be the first thing to show up. Not the love, not the memories, not the voice in my head, which is my dad, guiding me and giving me advice, which I've been able to tap into more and more recently. But I think that guilt and shame are such a huge part of the grief process. And it makes it so difficult to access that person after they're gone. Where when people would say to me, he's still with you because he's part of you and he's part of your memories. And I was like, please don't say that to me. He is not here. He is gone. She is gone. If you say that to me, I'm just going to get angry, because I was so angry. And there was no sense of connecting to them at all. It just was like, they are gone and I don't have them anymore. And that's all I can feel is the immense loss and zero connection to them. And when I do try to connect to them, all I feel is shame and guilt. And so that's part of what I think is important about sharing my story, is that a lot of people lose loved ones in traumatic situations. A lot of people lose loved ones because they have to take care of them through, terminal cancer, where you are constantly questioning, am I doing the right thing? And then when they're gone, did I do the right thing? Could I have done more? I would have done it this way. If I'd known at the time, maybe I could have done this. There's a lot of that goes on that I think people don't talk about. And that doesn't stop just because the person isn't here anymore. And I think it really stops people from fully accessing not just their grief process, but their loved one who's gone. Now that the guilt and the shame are gone and I have forgiven myself, I can hear my dad talking to me when I think, oh, what would dad say if I had this business thing come up, or I was having this tough moment with my mental health or whatever it is, what would he say? And I can hear him now. I can talk about memories with my grandmother and laugh myself stupid because she was so dry and so funny. And I can think about her terrible Hallmark movies. And I can remember all the times my dad was healthy and all the things we did together and the bushwalking we did as kids. And Mum and I went driving around our old neighborhood where we would go and stay with Dad, because my parents were split from when I was 2, so we'd have weekends with him. Hello, Lolly. You can sense I'm crying. That's why you're allowed to stay. Can always sense when I'm upset. And we were driving and I was like, I've got to put the window down. It was quite cold. I was like, I'm sorry, Mum, I've got to put the window down. I got to smell, because he lived in this really bushlandy area. And I knew I hadn't been there since I was like 16. I knew exactly what it would smell like. And I opened the window and got that rush of like rainforesty bushland kind of air. And I saw the path that we used to walk down. We used to go bushwalking all the time. It was our main activity. It's what we always used to do. Great free activity for parents trying to keep kids entertained. And I was just transported back there in such a lovely way, in such a happy, like grateful, oh my God, I was so lucky to have a dad who loved spending time with me and taught me so much. And, I want to have a kid one day who I can do that with, and it will feel like he's there, as opposed to not being able to feel him with me and guiding me and advising me. Because my dad loved me and I know exactly what he would say to me in pretty much every situation. So at the moment, I'm not being hit in the face with waves of grief, which is not to say that won't come back. I'm sort of in a period of peace and calm and gratitude and feeling connected to him and feeling connected to my gran. But I'm not naive in thinking that, the grief process is like my recovery process, in that I was able to resolve my issues with food and my issues with my body and my issues with my brain as far as what eating disorder was doing. Grief is not like that, and that's something I really had to wrestle with too. Like, I want things to have process and steps and answers and outcomes, and that's my framework. And life is just not like that in some ways. And the privilege of loving someone so much should come with a price. And when they are not here anymore, the love and the loss is the price. And it's a price worth paying for sure. I saw this great quote. I've struggled so hard to really resonate with short, sharp explanations of grief because it's so complex and nuanced and so, specific to the individual. But one quote that I saw recently, and I'll try to find it and we'll try to pop it up here, is that grief is like homesickness when you can never go home again. And it's so true. The longing and the nostalgia and the sadness and the wanting to reach out and wanting to be somewhere where you can never be again really made sense to me. And it also gave me permission to say, it's okay, you can always hold space for yourself. You can always have compassion for yourself and let yourself and meet yourself where you are. It's one of my biggest mantras, thanks to Carolyn Costin, one of my greatest teachers and a wonderful friend, that you meet yourself where you are. And right now, I'm going to make the most of the lack of guilt and the abundant forgiveness and compassion that I'm capable of right now, and carry that with me into a time when maybe that's harder to access. But if you are someone on a grief journey, please know that you are not alone, that just like those of us with eating disorders have an unspoken language, those of us who've had, as that wonderful Nora McInerney, I think her name is, says, when it's your front row at the funeral, you will understand, but you will also have an army of people who understand right along with you.
Once it's your grief and your front row at the funeral, you get it. You understand what you're experiencing is not a moment in time. It's not a bone that will reset, but that you've been touched by something chronic, something incurable. It's not fatal, but sometimes grief feels like it could be. And if we can't prevent it in one another, what can we do? We need each other to remember, to help each other remember that grief is this multitasking emotion, that you can and will be sad and happy, you'll be grieving and able to love in the same year or week, the same breath. We need to remember that a grieving person is going to laugh again and smile again. If they're lucky, they'll even find love again. That yes, absolutely, they're going to move forward. But that doesn't mean that they've moved on.
So just wanting to offer that bit of insight and hope and honesty, and just sending you all so much love. So grateful for you, so thankful that you've been here to carry me, and the wonderful feedback you've given me about podcasts and moments I've shared my experience with grief, and that it has helped. Does make it feel like it kind of has a place to go, and my dad would be really proud that I was continuing to kind of use it for good and for connection. So yeah, that's just my current update. It's a little bit, it's never going to be a fixed story. Like, guys, I don't have grief anymore. Like, that's never going to be the story. But that's kind of the purpose of sharing, is that you have permission to feel whatever it is you feel at whatever stage you're at. But the constant is that you are not alone in that process. And what do you know? Your order is on the move. Fabulous. So I get to chat to you guys, and then I get to eat a banh mi. And let's see if we can pick up Lola. Come here, but Oh, no. Oh, how are we going to do this? Are you happy? No. Bye. Anyway, guys, sending you all a ton of love. I will see you in the next video. Take care of yourselves, be kind to yourselves, and I'll chat to you soon. Hi, guys. Welcome back to the channel for another video. Today, I thought I'd talk a little bit about where I am currently. Actually, you know what? Currently, I'm actually going to order my lunch, which is going to be a chicken banh mi from Rolled. Barbecue chicken banh mi. That's a yes. Add to cart. Soft drink, also a yes. Pepsi, add to cart. Do I want prawn crackers? Stupid question. Do I feel like them? Here's a journey through intuitive eating. I don't think I do. I think I just feel like the bun bun. Do I want a bao bun? No, I want a banh mi. Okay. Supporting local restaurants in lockdown and supporting my stomach always. Let's do it.